Hey review family, keep it high, keep it tight. My name is Boris, the review guy, and I'm back again to bring you another video. Welcome to my next installment of kind of my list videos to end out the year. Don't know what chronological order they're going in, but this is my least favorite albums of 2018. One of the videos that I personally like watching from other YouTubers because I always like seeing them take massive doo-doos on the albums that they think suck. Well, this list is a bit different for me. I am not discrediting every single artist on this list, and hopefully you guys will understand that it doesn't mean that I necessarily hate these albums, which there are a couple that I genuinely have some disdain for, but other than that, it's mostly just albums that really did not tickle my fancy in terms of my music listening and how I enjoyed it. So let's get right on into the list, gunshot style. These are all going to be in the description below, so if you want to go see my extensive reviews of each of these albums, you can do that. But first, I want to start off with some honorable mentions. So the first is Nicki Minaj's album, Queen. This is one of the most uninventive female rap albums that I have heard ever, and I feel like while I don't like Nicki Minaj for the most part, she does have some emotion and kind of pizzazz to her style and her performance, but on this album it did not feel like it was explored nearly enough as it could have, because Nicki Minaj is an interesting figure. She is a very strange, wacky person, kind of like a Lady Gaga, but for rap, and I feel like Queen was a very half-baked, boring album. And it really didn't help with the hissy fit she threw when it didn't debut at #1, playing the sexist card, playing the card that the streaming platforms were working against her and not doing the ads. I'm not saying that's true or not, but it really felt like a child reacting to something bad, and it really made me dislike the album even more. Next up, we got Skeleton Witch, Devouring Radiant Light. So, there is really nothing I should say about this album that I didn't say in the review. It is a very boring, atmospheric black metal album that really just rides the fringes of quite a few different genres, and there's also thrash metal involved, there's black metal, there's atmosphere, but I don't think any of it was executed to any length, and they weren't even a jack of all trades. They weren't even mastering one of the genres they were trying to play with. I feel like it was all just this big cacophony amalgamation that didn't really amount to anything on the entire album, and I did not like it. Next up, we got Shawn Mendes' self-titled album. There's a couple hits on this album that were played on the radio and stuff, but I still do not enjoy this album. It's way too pillowy, way too glitzy, way too just shimmering and glimmering. The production really does set it on a league of its own in a bad way, in my opinion, and I don't think that Shawn Mendes, I've never been into him. I don't think I'm ever going to be into Shawn Mendes. I just think that this album really did not come off as tasteful. If anything, it came off as tasteless to me. So the next one is a review that has the most dislikes of any video on my entire channel. That's pretty hard to do. I have a lot of videos. That is my review of Ghost's album, Prequel, and I feel like I did not specify something in that. Ghost is a very talented band. I understand how crucially important to heavy metal it is that they were nominated for a Grammy, that they have so many awards behind their belt, that they have so much of a fan base, that they're somewhat accessible. It doesn't come down to that, in my opinion, alone. I enjoyed Meliora. I really enjoy some of their earlier work. I am not discrediting Ghost as an entire entity. This album just wasn't for me. It felt a little bit too theatrical. It felt a little bit too melodramatic, and I understand that's part of their shtick. That's a part of their niche. I just didn't really like it, and I would much rather listen to their earlier material than this material. Next up, Shinedown's album, Attention, Attention. Hard rock took a major hitting with a lot of really crappy releases from bands that have been churning out the same material for a while, and I have higher hopes for Shinedown. I am a Shinedown fan. I like the earlier material, but it really is getting tiresome now how they're just recycling the same stuff over and over. On the same note, Godsmack, When Legends Rise. No legends rised on this album, let's just put it that way. Yeah, both of these albums are really bad. And then we get to the top 5. These are the doo-doo. These are the peak pantheon of bad. And these are my 5 least favorite albums of 2018. So, let's get into it. Number 5, Black Labyrinth by Jonathan Davis. So, Korn. So, I don't like Korn. I'm not a Korn fan. And when this album came out, I was a little intrigued because it was released on Sumerian Records, which is my favorite label. But at the same time, leading up to it, when I heard the singles, I was so bored from the get-go. Like, going into this album, I knew I wasn't gonna like it because I don't like Korn. When you bake it down to just the frontman and put him on his own solo album, there's no way that's gonna turn out good. And that is literally part of my number one pick, just to give you a little bit of a hint towards that. But Black Labyrinth is such a boring album. I can see what it's going for. There's some interesting lyrical themes, but they're not executed in a way that makes it any more interesting than its potential is. It's mostly just a potential struggle, and that makes it even worse because you want it to be better than it is. Number 4, Finner's Kane with Elegy. Boring, atmospheric black metal album. I named this my least favorite album back when it came out, and for good reason. I found nothing to be desired on this album. There was just so much that I think could have been done better, and it was so base level and so status quo that I just could not even get through it. I mean, I finished it and did my review, but I would never go back to it. Number 3, Skins, XXX Tentacion. This is an interesting one because I don't blame it on X. I blame it on the companies. I blame it on the conglomerate that is the monopolized music scene and industry that is trying to suck and sap every last stream and buy, in which it's working because this did debut at number 1 on the Billboard Top 200 charts. They're just trying to get as much money as they can on X's name before he fades out of relevancy in, like, the main public eye, and all that's going to be left are the people that really enjoyed his music, the big fans that were left. And they know that as long as his name is in the forefront and as long as people are still talking about it, they're just going to keep churning out these posthumous releases. And this feels cobbled together. It's not even an album. It's barely an EP. It should be a mixtape. It shouldn't exist because these are just a bunch of demos that weren't even properly mixed going into the album. It just sounds like they threw a bunch of X's demos onto random beats. I mean, God's sake, Guardian Angel is a reversed beat from Jocelyn Flores off of his album 17. They didn't even get a proper beat for it. They just reversed a beat from a popular song of his. And there are some interesting moments on this album. There are, like, Train Food's pretty good. Guardian Angel, for what it's worth, is a decent track. But songs like 1 Minute with Kanye West are so phoned in and so phony and such boring beats and boring vocalization, if you can even call it that I just cannot find a reason to go back to this album. And it saddens me that this is going to be such a blot on X's career in the grave, basically. And he doesn't have much left to release, probably, but they're going to find it and they're going to release it, and it's probably going to go even more downhill from there. Number 2, Imagine Dragons, Origins. I did a whole big skit throughout the review of this, and it was a lot of fun. This album is so... This ain't the Origins for anything. This is about as bad as you calling your album Evolve. I did a whole skit for this album review and throughout, and this was such a bad album. It's so melodramatic. It is so overblown and over the top. The mixing is atrociously in your face. The beats in beats. This is a rock album and they have beats. This exemplifies why pop rock is such, like, a genuinely hated genre nowadays, because you got bands like Imagine Dragons at the forefront trying to lead it with such overblown choruses and boring verses and mixing that sounds just so glimmering and so, like, I'm just smiling because I'm remembering the review I did of this. It's just so bad. There's, like, one song I like on this, and it's Bad Liar, and that's only because the chorus is good. The verses are crap. They suck. And I just hate this album. Go watch the review. I highly suggest watching the review. It's bad. The album, not the review. Number 1 shouldn't come as much of a surprise. Quavo with Quavo Huncho. Remember when I said Black Labyrinth by Jonathan Davis was kind of the solo thing? I don't like the Migos. I hate the Migos probably more than I do Korn. And then when you put Quavo on his own album and you get, like, I think this is over an hour. I genuinely can't remember because I've tried to erase it from my memory, but I think this is an hour plus of material of the most boring trap you will ever hear in your life. The only thing that saved it from getting to 1 out of 10 is because there were some interesting guest features, but other than that, this was so boring of a trap album with beat choices that were not interesting whatsoever. And amidst the field of experimentation and innovation and all of these people like Earl Sweatshirt and Anderson .Paak and Kendrick Lamar and these people that are really trying to bring trap and bring rap up into the forefront with some interesting ideas, you got people like Quavo who's trying to drag it back into the dirt where it came from, and I don't think it came out in any way good. So yeah, so those were my least favorite albums of 2018. What were yours? What albums just did not tickle you in the right place? That sounded really wrong. I'm just gonna say tickle your fancy and forget I ever said that sentence. What are your least favorites? Why? What do you think of mine? Do you disagree? Are one of these your favorite albums and why? Go ahead and post a comment section below. Like, comment, subscribe. It helps me out a lot, and I'll talk to you guys next time. But until then, my name is Jay Morris, the Review Guy, and I'm signing off saying farewell.